All right. This is a close reading of Yellow Wallpaper, just the beginning of it. You'll note that I'm at the very beginning. I talked about the setup of things. And what I've highlighted is something I'll explain in a moment, but I'm highlighting the yellow parts because we can kind of see something that maybe helps us with the one of the questions about gender dynamics in the story. John laughs at me, of course, but one expects that in a marriage is something that she says he does about the idea that maybe this place is haunted. And the idea that you expect to be laughed at in marriage is something that she just kind of states as if, I don't know, is she stating it ironically? That's one of the questions about how we read this text. Is she sarcastic? Is there um, something going on that's not, that is sort of subtext or something we can derive about the meaning by looking closely at the words? You see, he does not believe I'm sick. This is after stating that he's a physician, and I had gone over that sentence, I believe, in class, where we could read this: John is a physician, and perhaps that is one reason I do not get well faster. In parentheses, I would not say that to a living soul, of course, but this dead paper and a great relief to my mind. So she would write it. She would not say it to a person. Again, she highlights if a physician of high standing and one's own husband, right, these two things are equal in terms of who is in charge, assures friends and relatives that there's really nothing the matter with one but temporary nervous depression. This is what he has diagnosed her with. A slight hysterical tendency. This is how they used to describe women who were depressed or unsatisfied with life. All right. My brother is also a physician. She's got another man who is agreeing and confirming with her husband. Right. So I take my phosphates or phosphites, whichever it is, and tonics and journeys and air and exercise, and am absolutely forbidden to work until I'm well again. Personally, I disagree with their ideas. Personally, I believe that congenial or enjoyable work with excitement and change would do me good. I've highlighted this in green because you can see she's pushing back, at least in her mind. But what is one to do? I did write for a while in spite of them, but it does exhaust me a good deal, having to be so sly about it, or else meet with heavy opposition. So it's not the writing that exhausts her; it is having to be so secretive about it, or get in trouble, basically get opposition from her husband. I sometimes fancy that in my condition, if I had less opposition and more society and stimulus, more meetings with friends and stimulation of her mind. But John says the very worst thing I can do is to think about my condition, and I confess it always makes me feel bad. So John actually is talking about what she can think. He's telling her not to even think about her condition. So I will let it alone and talk about the house. And then she does. And this is where you can find some imagery, hedges and walls and gates. She starts talking about the house, the delicious garden. But even that, so here she says this whole thing about the greenhouses, but all the windows were broken. There was some legal trouble, I believe, something about the heirs and co-heirs. Anyhow, the place has been empty for years. So in other words, whatever the legal trouble is, the people that the family that owned the house, their children or whatever, fought over it and broke the windows, which spoils my ghostliness. The idea that maybe ghosts had broken the window, and I don't care. There's something being strange about the house. I can feel it. All right, so here is where it seems to be maybe this weird ending that you've gotten to is actually because of the haunted house. I even said that to John one moonlight evening, but he said, what I felt was a draft and shut the window. So again, he defines what her feelings are. Some people these days call it gaslighting. There's nothing wrong with you, they keep saying. I get unreasonably angry with John sometimes. I'm sure I never used to be so sensitive. I think it is due to this nervous condition. This is very understated. What does this mean? She gets unreasonably angry. We don't see that rage here at the beginning of the story. Maybe we do. Maybe we see that as part of something at the end of the story. But John says, if I feel so, I shall neglect proper self-control. So I take the pains to control myself, before him at least, and that makes me very tired. So she's exhausted now because she has to hold in her actual anger. She takes pains to control herself. And this is how he talks to her. But John says, if I feel so angry, I shall neglect proper self-control. So again, looking closely at this, his control is not just of like what she can do physically, like leaving the room or having friends over, but how she even thinks about it. All right, and now she goes back to talking about what she said she would talk about, the house itself. Again, more old-fashioned chintz hangings. But he is very careful and loving, and hardly lets me stir without special direction. Well, this is another one of those details that might be, I put it in green because maybe it is sarcastic, all right? Because this is not a nice thing. Being careful and loving is, but not letting her stir or move or do anything without direction. I have a scheduled prescription for each hour of the day. He takes all care from me, and so I feel basely ungrateful not to value it more. So here's a conflict, unless, again, this might be sarcasm. He takes all care from me, meaning he takes on her care. She doesn't take care of herself. And so I feel basely ungrateful not to value it more. So this could be sincere. Her culture, her society expects her to be grateful for all that he's doing, and yet she is not, and that's what's kind of key here. All right, I'm focusing on this because it explains the extreme behavior at the end. And one of the things you're doing is tracking this diagnosis, how her mind goes from this state where there's still some element of rebellion, where she's questioning her care. All right, he said we came here solely on my account, that I was to have perfect rest and all the air I can get. So here he kind of puts any kind of blame about the house on her. This is all about you. And again, then she switches back to describing the house. And here she starts to describe the yellow of the wallpaper, all right, or the design. The color is repellent, almost revolting, smoldering, unclean yellow, strangely faded by the slow turning sunlight. Obviously, yellow is an image in the story, and yellow can mean different things. It can be associated with sunlight, flowers, but it can also be jaundice, which is when you get sick and you actually turn yellow, or death. Right? Is a dull yet lurid orange in some places. Orange. I don't know. I'm from New Jersey. I say orange. Dull is the opposite of lurid. Lurid is sort of intriguing in some way. It's a little bit. Well, look it up. All right. Sticky sulfur. Sulfur is a bad smelling element, often associated with death or demons. All right, there comes John, and I must put this away. He hates to have me write a word. So here, in this, she's writing this thing, and John comes, so she has to put it away. We've been here 2 weeks. Right? We get a time check. I haven't felt like writing before since that first day. I'm sitting by the window now, up in this atrocious nursery. All right, there's going to be a little irony to that in a second. There is nothing to hinder my writing as much as I please, save lack of strength. So there's nothing really stopping her from writing because John is away all day and sometimes and even some nights when his cases are serious, but she's so exhausted from being treated like this. And then this is clearly sarcasm. John is away all day and even some nights when his cases are serious. I'm glad my case is not serious. But these nervous troubles are dreadfully depressing. John does not know how much I really suffer. He knows there is no reason to suffer, and that satisfies him. So in other words, he, again, is just dismissing her experience because he knows there's no reason. He doesn't see any possible reason. We're going to see a possible reason within the page. Of course, it is only nervousness. It does weigh on me so not to do my duty in any way. What this is referring to is the idea of her role as a wife, which was much more clearly delineated at the time, which is to take care of your husband and his house. I meant to be such a help to John, such a real rest and comfort, and here I am, a comparative burden already. Okay, so this one seems to maybe sincerely get into her head that she's not doing her duty as a wife. Nobody would believe what an effort it is to do what little I am able to dress and entertain and order things. So to entertain is to actually host people, but she doesn't really get to have her friends over. It is fortunate Mary is so good with the baby, such a dear baby, and yet I cannot be with him. It makes me so nervous. So here we are, page 5 of this, the way we're deeply into the story. This is the first mention of a baby, and she can't be with the baby, and Mary takes care of the baby, and yet she's staying in the nursery. So there's something going on here. When we look at detail, sometimes the lack of detail, the lack of mentioning the baby, shows some significance. I suppose John was never nervous in his life. He laughs at me so about this wallpaper. So she has mentioned the wallpaper to him, and he just laughs at her. Again, she just switches back to this topic of John, and we don't hear much about the baby through the rest of the story. At first, he meant to repaper the room, but afterwards, he said I was letting it get the better of me, and that nothing was worse for a nervous patient than to give way to such fancies. So part of his treatment is to ignore what she asks of him. The place is doing you good, he said, and really, dear, I don't care to renovate the house for just 3 months rental. So again, there's nothing that she said that the place is doing her any good. He is just saying that that's what's happening. Then do let us go downstairs, I said. There are such pretty rooms there. He then took me in his arms and called me a blessed little goose and said he would go down to the cellar if I wished and have it whitewashed into the bargain. So he's promising to make renovations. He calls her a blessed little goose, which is sort of infantilizing her, treating her like a child or a baby. So I'm jumping to the ending. You're going to watch this for the close reading of the beginning and ending and another video about the whole thing in the context. But I know the ending is a little bit confusing sometimes when kids are reading this. So then I peeled off all the wallpaper I could reach standing on the floor. It sticks horribly and the pattern just enjoys it. All those strangled heads and bulbous eyes and waddling fungus growths just shriek with derision. So now we've gotten to the point, and you've read the part where this kind of builds from seeing just the pattern being weird to seeing a woman back there to seeing herself back there. I'm getting angry enough to do something desperate. To jump out of the window would be admirable exercise, but the bars are too strong even to try. Besides, I wouldn't do it. Of course not. I know well enough that a step like that is improper and might be misconstrued. To be misconstrued would be misunderstood. She's afraid what people would think. I don't like to look out of windows even. There are so many of those creeping women, and they creep so fast. I wonder if they all come out of that wallpaper as I did. But I am securely fastened now by my well-hidden rope. You don't get me out in the road there. I suppose I shall have to get back behind the pattern when it comes night, and that is hard. So she's really kind of lost it here. It is so pleasant to be out in this great room and creep around as I please. I don't want to go outside. I won't, even if Jenny asks me to. For outside, you have to creep on the ground, and everything is green instead of yellow. So as crazy as it seems, there seems to be this element of accepting the inside, this color she's associating now with some sort of comfort or safety as opposed to being outside. But here I can creep smoothly on the floor. My shoulder just fits in that long smooch around the wall so I cannot lose my way. Why, there's John at the door. So she has her shoulder pressed into the place where the floor and the ceiling meet, and she's crawling around the floor. There's John at the door. It's no use, young man, you can't open it. So she's locked it and out. How does he call and pound? Now he's crying for an axe. It would be a shame to break down that beautiful door. John, dear, I say in the gentlest voice, the key is down by the front steps under a plantain leaf. That silenced him for a few minutes. Then he said very quietly indeed, open the door, my darling. I can't, I said. The key is down by the front door under a plantain leaf. And then I said it again, several times, very gently and slowly, as she's crawling around the floor with her shoulder against the wall. And said it so often that he had to go and see, and he got it, of course, and came in. He stopped short by the door. She had to keep saying it over and over, almost like a chant. But again, he also wouldn't really listen to her. What is the matter? He cried. For God's sake, what are you doing? I kept on creeping just the same. But I looked at him over my shoulder. So she's got one shoulder pressed into the floor as she's crawling, and she looks back over her shoulder at him. I got out at last, I said, in spite of you and Jane, and I've pulled off most of the paper, so you can't put me back. Okay, so there is some prison break element to her hallucination. Now, why should that man have fainted? But he did, and right across my path by the wall, so that I had to creep over him every time. So she just keeps going in circles, crawling around with her shoulder pressed to the wall, climbing over her husband who has passed out. Okay, I'm going to stop here.